This is NTD Evening News. Live from our NTD Global Headquarters in New York City, here is Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. Texas once again not allowed to arrest illegal immigrants for now. There was another reversal in the ongoing battle between the Lone Star State and the Biden administration. Here's the latest on the state's embattled immigration law.
After multiple reversals on this ongoing legal battle, the Supreme Court on Tuesday allowed the Texas law, known as Senate Bill 4, to take effect. The High Court gave jurisdiction over the case back to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Wednesday spoke at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, explaining what happened after the Supreme Court made its decision.
Like watching a tennis match, the ball goes back and forth across the net constantly. Later on last night, the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals said not so fast.
On Wednesday, the Fifth Circuit heard oral arguments to decide whether they'll lift the temporary stay, but it's unclear if they'll make a decision before April. That's when the appeals court will hear further arguments in the case. The lawyer for Texas argued the judges should allow at least parts of Senate Bill 4 to take effect in the meantime.
Texas has a right to defend itself. And under any plausible reading of that right, at least some applications of SB 4 are constitutional.
The law would allow Texas to arrest and deport illegal immigrants. The judges on Wednesday seem to have more problems with the deportation provision of the bill. And this law would set historic precedent because immigration has always been under the jurisdiction of the federal government, not states. Liberal Supreme Court Justices Sonia Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson issued this dissent on Tuesday, saying that law upends the federal-state balance of power that has existed for over a century. But Texas argues the bill mirrors federal law and was put in place to compensate for the Biden administration's lack of border enforcement.
But we finally got a law crafted in a way to be able to withstand legal challenge, be able to withstand the arguments that will be made.
For now, Texas is not allowed to enforce the law, pending the hearing on its constitutionality in April. The Supreme Court could also intervene at any time.
In Mississippi, 2 former officers have been sentenced over the torture of 2 men. They are the 3rd and the 4th former sheriff's deputies to get prison sentences in this case. Daniel Opdyke will spend more than 17 years in prison. Christian Dedman will get 40 years in prison, the harshest sentence so far in this case. Opdyke and Dedman are among 6 former officers who pleaded guilty to federal charges in relation to the torture of 2 black men in January 2023. During the court hearing today, Opdyke sobbed as he addressed the victims. He said, "I can only take full responsibility for my actions, and I deeply regret all the pain and suffering I've caused you." The judge also ordered Opdyke to undergo mental health treatment, including anger management. He also has to pay over $79,000 in restitution to the victims. 2 of the 6 former officers were sentenced yesterday. They received 20 years and roughly 17 years in prison, respectively. The 2 remaining officers will be sentenced tomorrow. The clock is ticking for former President Trump to post bond in New York Attorney General Letitia James's case. In a filing today, she said if he doesn't have the cash, he can use his real estate holdings. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has more on that and an update in the Georgia case.
If he does not have funds to pay off the judgment.
New York Attorney General Letitia James is skeptical of former President Trump's claim that he can't get a $464 million bond. She said in a filing on Wednesday that there are other ways to get the bond. For example, getting more than one bond by dividing the bond amount among multiple sureties, thereby limiting any individual surety's risk to a smaller sum. Trump and his company need to post a bond for the full amount by next week in order to stop James from seizing his assets. Last month, a New York appellate judge refused to halt the payment while Trump appeals. Now, Trump's asking the appeals court to step in again, this time asking for a delay in posting the bond. In an ABC interview last month, James threatened to take matters into her own hands.
We will seek, judgment enforcement mechanisms in court, and we will ask the judge to seize his assets.
In the Wednesday filing, she argues it's possible to use real estate holdings as collateral for a bond, and that if surety companies won't accept his assets, it's because his holdings are not nearly as valuable as defendants claim. The appeals court has yet to rule on Trump's latest request, and the clock is ticking.
Is that there are several legal issues to sort through.
In Georgia, Judge Scott McAfee granted Trump's request to appeal his order, which allows District Attorney Fani Willis to continue prosecuting the case. But he says he's not pausing the case. He said he will continue addressing the many other unrelated pretrial motions. In New York, a federal judge won't sanction Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen. Cohen accidentally gave his lawyer fake case citations generated by artificial intelligence. The judge called it embarrassing. But he refused to end Cohen's supervised release. Cohen pleaded guilty in 2018 to campaign finance violations and tax evasion. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The House Oversight Committee holding a hearing today titled Influence Peddling, examining Joe Biden's abuse of public office. The hearing is part of the House impeachment inquiry into the president for allegedly using his political influence to enrich his family members. Today marked the beginning of the evidence examination phase of the inquiry. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us now from the Capitol.
The Republican-led House Oversight Committee summoned Hunter Biden and his former associates Tony Bobulinski and Jason Galanis and Devin Archer to testify in today's hearing. Devin Archer and Hunter Biden declined to participate, while Democrats summoned former Rudy Giuliani associate Lev Parnas to be their witness. During their opening statements, Tony Bobulinski and Jason Galanis repeated that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by Biden family members in order to make money through political influence. I spoke with Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, and they were both very critical of the credibility of these witnesses. Let's listen to what they had to say.
The Republican majority has launched an impeachment inquiry in the United States based on information that was sourced from an individual that was collaborating with a Russian asset.
The Republican witnesses, we have someone that's, in my opinion, a disgraced business person and someone from federal prison. So I think that tells you a lot about how the hearing is going to go. There's been no evidence to support any sort of link between the president and Hunter Biden.
It is important to note that Lev Parnas was also convicted in 2022 of conspiring to funnel foreign money into political campaigns. I also spoke with the other side of the aisle, Republican Congressman Eric Burlison and Republican Congressman Mike Waltz, and they were both very clear on what the mission for today's hearing was. Let's hear what they had to say.
We can't find anybody that he worked with that is not a good actor. I mean, he was doing business with some of the most corrupt individuals in the world.
I think get out on the public record what has been going on with a sophisticated, complex, deliberately on their part, difficult to understand so that they could obfuscate corruption ring.
I also spoke with Republican Congressman Tim Burchett. He expects a vote to happen soon in the House floor to see whether the House of Representatives recommends or not articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden. He also had strong words against those who criticized the witnesses today. Let's hear Congressman Tim Burchett.
Democrats are accusing that today's witnesses are felons or have criminal past and that they're not viable witnesses. Do you have any response to that?
No, look, the only reason that the Bidens aren't in that category is they're Bidens.
After today's hearing, it remains to be seen whether House Republicans will put to a vote articles of impeachment against President Biden. Back to you.
Campaigning in Arizona today, President Biden unveils one of the biggest federal investments in U.S. chip manufacturing. But while the president touts his economic accomplishments, he is trailing former President Trump in key swing state polls. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
President Biden on Wednesday announced $20 billion in loans and grants for tech giant Intel, and that marks one of the biggest ever U.S. government investments in chip manufacturing here in the U.S. as part of an effort to reduce U.S. reliance on China and Taiwan. Here's what President Biden was saying while announcing the move in Arizona today.
Again, the bottom line, I want to build a future in America. My predecessor It's going to let the future be built in China and other countries, not America, because it may be cheaper for those investing.
While Biden takes aim at Trump, accusing Trump of wanting to build a future in China, and Trump's campaign sent out an email on Wednesday calling Biden China-loving and saying Biden's EV-friendly policies will hurt the U.S. and benefit China. And Trump has proposed heavy tariffs on Chinese EVs. Meanwhile, Biden's Wednesday announcement comes as he's trying to promote his legislative record, including the CHIPS and Science Act, to voters in battleground states. Recent polling has shown Biden trailing behind former President Trump in key swing states, including in Arizona, where a new Emerson College poll shows that Trump is leading Biden by about 4 percentage points. And after another campaign stop in Texas on Wednesday, Biden will next campaign in North Carolina and New York next week. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The Chinese Communist Party's forced organ harvesting of innocent people. That was the topic of a panel discussion today on Capitol Hill. This as Utah became the latest state to outlaw insurance coverage for organ transplant surgeries in China and other countries known for forced organ harvesting. NTD's Jack Bradley has the story.
Addressing the Chinese Communist Party's forced organ harvesting of Chinese people. Today, the Congressional Executive Commission on China addressing one of China's darkest secrets, the non-consensual forced organ harvesting of religious believers like practitioners of Falun Gong.
We continue to build the case against the Chinese Communist Party that they are exploiting young men and women, average age 28. Thousands of them every single year who are killed to get their organs. Many are Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, other political and religious prisoners.
This is horrifying, and it should horrify anyone, whether you're here in the United States or back in China. It is truly the wholesale rounding up of individuals of a persecuted class so that they can make, as we heard today, potentially millions of dollars off of organs harvested.
The panel discussed how the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting was specifically designed to suppress Falun Gong. Falun Gong, or Falun Dafa, is a spiritual practice based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. In 1999, there were reportedly 100 million people practicing in China, a number that surpasses the membership of the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese regime launched its persecution that year and targeted Falun Gong practitioners for organ harvesting because they maintain a healthy lifestyle and don't drink or smoke.
What you have is this massive transplant infrastructure hand in hand with the incarceration of Falun Gong, which was almost 2 million at one point, very briefly in 2001. And then it kind of slows down to about 1 million to 500,000 at any given time. In every province in China, you see a transplant hospital go up. Every single one.
Probably lots of Americans are desperate because their waiting period is so long in the United States for the organs to receive. But going to China, you just have to think of it, you know. Somebody will be killed on demand.
We can't do anything about the supply of stolen organs, but what we can do is choke off the payment for those organs.
We have to stop CCP that dominating, that, you know, this is innocent people's organs, that we really have to stop it. But I am just so frustrated. We've been known this issue for last 30 years. And we really have to do something more than just hearing here. But the whole world, we have to work together to stop these horrific things.
The movement to oppose the Chinese regime's forced organ harvesting continues as more doctors and politicians step up to oppose these crimes against humanity. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Senate today receiving a briefing on TikTok from U.S. intelligence agencies. This comes just days after the House passed a bill aimed at addressing the app's affiliation with Communist China. The legislation requires TikTok to divest from the Chinese parent company ByteDance, or else face a ban from U.S. app stores. Despite overwhelming support for the bill in the House, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has not yet indicated how the Senate plans to proceed. If the bill gets through the upper chamber, President Biden has said he's willing to sign it. Experts say China is trying to take over America's food supply. At a House hearing today, lawmakers heard testimony on risks to U.S. food security. NTD's Virginia Gibson has more.
I have witnessed this hostile communist country work to systematically take over our food supply chain.
Governor Kristi Noem told lawmakers Wednesday that China is a threat to American agriculture.
They have decades ago started buying our fertilizer companies, controlling our ability to access fertilizer, bring it into the United States. Then I watched them buy up our chemical companies. Now most of our processing facilities are owned by the Communist Party or Chinese government. Now they are coming for our land.
Noem said that China will have complete control of the U.S. food supply after they buy up all the land.
70% of the crop protection products that are produced globally, most from China. Another 40% of the world's phosphorus supply originates in China. Imagine if they shut off our supply.
Kip Tom is a former U.S. ambassador to the UN agencies for food and agriculture. He said China is strategically building a dominant world food system at the expense of the U.S.
The Chinese are aggressive in their approach in investing in a lot of these developing nations to make sure they can secure a food source.
Tom said China is investing all around the world, largely to secure food sources. Africa has 4.2 million square miles of arable land, while the U.S. has less than 600,000. Tom says he believes the U.S. should invest more in research and development and cybersecurity.
Further, China's massive cyber warfare divisions, notably PLA Unit 61398, have the capability to disrupt key American infrastructure critical to our agriculture. This includes power and water utilities, as well as communication and transportation systems.
Policy expert Nova Daly said this critical infrastructure is exposed because of gaps in current laws.
Given the advances in farm technologies, our reliance on supply chains that provide nefarious Chinese actors kill switches to our machinery, our eyes, or our production, these all are matters that should be addressed.
Daly also said the U.S. needs to keep on improving its cybersecurity as China's threats become more sophisticated. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
Leaders in the emerging nuclear fusion industry are meeting in Washington, D.C. today and tomorrow. Their meeting is focusing on the competition with China in this new technology. Nuclear fusion is the type of reaction that powers the sun. Andrew Holland, CEO of Fusion Industry Association, is hosting the two-day conference. He said China has the ambition to dominate the supply chain and the developers, and that it's time for the U.S. to respond to that challenge. A funding bill signed by President Biden this month contained $790 million for fusion science programs for 2024. And as we reported on earlier in the show, the Congressional Executive Commission on China held a hearing today investigating forced organ harvesting by the Chinese Communist Party. Joining us now to dive deeper into this issue is Dr. Weldon Gilcrease. He's the Deputy Director of the Medical Ethics Advocacy Group, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Weldon Gilcrease, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for having me.
Now, to begin, what is the impact and significance of a hearing like this in the U.S. Congress?
Well, I think it sheds light on an important topic that hasn't gone away. And I think some people that are familiar with forced organ harvesting think that this is an old topic because the Chinese transplant system in 2014 said it would stop by 2015. So I think this highlights that 9 years on, it continues to be a real problem. And because nothing was said when in 2006 by the medical community, by American medical institutions and medical societies, the problem has continued. It has continued to different victim groups like the Uyghurs, but really started with Falun Gong practitioners.
And now states like Texas and Utah have actually passed legislation to combat the Chinese Communist Party's forced organ harvesting. Your organization commended Utah, saying that the legislation will also, quote, stop collusion here at home. Now, what does that collusion mean in this sense? How are people maybe complicit unknowingly?
I think there's a real problem. There's such a protection of patient healthcare information. So the medical system, rightly so, is very cautious about protecting patients' information of where they're getting transplants, who they are, what kind of transplants they received. And so I think we have sort of gone to one end of the spectrum where we have such a protection of patient information that we don't know which American citizens, how many have traveled to China and either wittingly or unwittingly received an organ from somebody who was essentially killed on demand for that organ. So I think these bills highlight the issue in a way of trying to understand and have more transparency by putting pressure on insurance companies to not support American citizens that may travel to China and again, either wittingly or unwittingly receive an organ that is likely from somebody who has been essentially killed on demand.
Now, your organization has also been sounding the alarm for years on the U.S. medical institutions helping to train these surgeons who are Chinese nationals from hospitals associated with forced organ harvesting. So what about the U.S. doctors and medical institutions when it comes to this?
Yeah, I think this is a real problem. I think that there's, especially in the medical field, there's always this idea that collaboration must be a good thing. I think the problem is in a country that is under a totalitarian regime like the Chinese Communist Party, that's not the case. So I would have never in my wildest dreams been able to think that transplant, one of the greatest advances in the medical field in the last 5 to 6 decades, could be used as a weapon by a totalitarian system to essentially stomp out dissidents or stomp out victims in the way that the Chinese Communist Party has used organ transplant within China. So the issue of collaboration, cooperation, I think even though I think it's well intended often by the medical community, when you have a medical system that is under the pressures of the Chinese Communist Party, I don't think cooperation, I don't think collaboration is warranted until we know and have complete transparency that, in this case, transplant is not being used to kill the dissidents within China.
Are we seeing less of, say, the collaboration, but also maybe suggesting patients go to China, or is that also clouded?
Unfortunately, no. I don't think there's been enough of an awareness of what is happening in China. You know, just earlier this week, I was meeting with some of our trainees in institution work, and none of them had heard of forced organ harvesting. So I still think there's a real problem of awareness within the medical system. I don't think it's well covered in the media. I don't think it's well discussed within medical societies, within medical meetings. You know, I think a lot. There's really a fear of I think repercussions from the Chinese government, and that may be financial, that may be academic, but I think that fear has unfortunately kept most of the medical field and medical doctors and medical societies silent.
And on that note, what are you hoping to get out of this hearing today on the forced organ harvesting that's happening in China? What is needed to create real change?
Yeah, I do hope that there's more press. I hope there's more media coverage. I hope there's more out there that people start to push the medical doctors, surgeons, the medical field to say, did you know this is happening? And really raise the awareness, because the volumes of data around forced organ harvesting are substantial. Just in 3 reports alone, including the most recent in 2019 and 2020 by the China Tribunal, People's Independent Tribunal, it totals over 1,400 pages of data. And so that's a lot to get through. It's a lot to wrap your head around. But my hope is that this will highlight just how much there is out there that this happened starting in the early 2000s and continues to happen and continues to be a problem within China.
Well, then, Gilcrease, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Tiffany.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken is on another diplomatic tour of the Middle East. NTD's Jason Perry is here to explain the details. Jason, is there anything significant about this trip compared to Blinken's other trips to the Middle East?
Yes, there is something very significant about this trip. But first, let me just say that this is Blinken's 6th trip to the Middle East since the war began between Israel and Hamas. Today, Blinken landed in Saudi Arabia, where he met with officials there. Blinken is again pushing for a ceasefire to release the more than 100 hostages who remain in the Gaza Strip. This trip actually comes as fresh talks for a ceasefire have started this week in Qatar. So there could be some hope there. Blinken is also pushing for more humanitarian aid to get into the Gaza Strip. Now, Blinken's trip to the Middle East comes after President Biden recently urged Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to not conduct a ground offensive in the crowded city of Rafah. This has been a significant issue on which Israel and the United States do not see eye to eye.
On that note, why is the United States and Israel not agreeing about this ground operation in Rafah?
Well, President Biden recently urged Netanyahu to completely call off the ground offensive in Rafah. The city of Rafah is now home to over 1 million displaced people, so there is a risk for civilian casualties, and that could be one of the reasons why Biden is against this operation. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan even said it would be a mistake for Israel to enter Rafah, but it appears that Netanyahu won't budge and remains set on conducting ground operations there. He even went so far as to say that the war will not be complete unless they conduct ground operations in Rafah. Today, Netanyahu said that he had already approved the Israeli army's plan for operations there, and he said he will soon approve the Israeli army's plan to evacuate the population from the battlefields in Rafah. So we could possibly see ground operations in Rafah once this plan is approved. And in the meantime, Israeli troops are keeping the pressure on Hamas terrorists in other parts of the Gaza Strip.
Speaking of, the IDF recently did a raid on the Al-Shifa hospital. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this isn't the first time the IDF actually raided this hospital. Back in November, the IDF raided this hospital and found tunnels and weapons inside. And now a few months later, the IDF says Hamas is once again using this hospital as a base for terrorism. And this time when the IDF approached the hospital, they said that the terrorists began firing on Israeli troops. But apparently this was a successful mission for the IDF because they said they killed 90 terrorists in this operation. The IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari today gave an update from right out front of Al-Shifa Hospital.
None, civilians, doctors, medic teams, none have been hurt. Only the terrorists. We are supplying food, water. We have supplied yesterday 2 generators to the emergency room because there was a problem with electricity.
He also said they found over 11 million shekels in this compound, which is equivalent to a little more than $3 million. And they said this money was actually used to finance terrorism in the northern Gaza Strip. And the Israeli chief of the general staff said by this mission, they are achieving 2 things with this operation. One is striking Hamas leadership, and the other is adding pressure to the ceasefire talks.
Jason, thanks for those updates.
Thank you.
Last week, we reported on a U.S. Customs officer at a Chicago airport who held up Shen Yun artists and allegedly targeted them with Chinese Communist propaganda. Epoch Times senior investigative reporter Joshua Phillip went to Chicago to dig deeper into this incident. He joins us now to share what he's found. Joshua Phillip, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Tiffany.
Now, you have a new investigation out where you actually went down to Chicago to find out if federal officers are working under the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. Tell us about that. What did you find?
Yeah, so we had information that there were at least one officer who is, of course, working in customs was holding up Shen Yun Performing Arts on the grounds, it seems, where he says that they were Falun Gong, they were illegal, that they were political. And based on this, I mean, it's shocking because First of all, what is political about Shen Yun or Falun Gong? Only that the CCP persecutes them, and that Shen Yun is blacklisted in China because the CCP views it as a threat to its power because they showed the dance forms the CCP destroyed. That's being political? Last I checked, that's not illegal in the United States. And also, what's Falun Gong, right? It's persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP uses them as live sources for organ transplants, killing them for their organs. And he has a problem with Shen Yun, not based on American law, but based on something else. So what is it? Well, you know, the real concern here is that this individual, we're trying to find out his background, trying to find out what he was really doing and maybe what influenced his actions that day. He was going around to other customs agents, spreading this as well, yelling it at one point. We talked to people who said they heard him yelling it. Based on this, it seems like this U.S. customs agent was enforcing Chinese law on American soil. And I think that's really concerning, frankly.
So this sounds like transnational repression. As you mentioned, these are Americans coming back to America, getting questioned like the Chinese Communist Party would question, not under the U.S. Constitution way. What is the subversion, if you will, that led to this stage?
Well, again, we're trying to figure out the individual's motives. Like, we don't know what motivated this customs officer to do this. We were told that the individual was speaking with a mainland Chinese accent, and it does raise a couple of possibilities. One, maybe they didn't do proper background checks, and maybe he's getting influenced by the CCP on these issues. I don't know. Maybe it's that, for example, he just has been exposed to disinformation. But regardless of how he got exposed to this, that would make him stop even American citizens. You know, there were some Canadians and others, but they're legally here in the U.S. But the individual he really went after, it seems, was, of course, based out of Texas. You know, she's as American as I am. I'm about as American as you can get. But the issue, I think, is that this individual did seem to be trying to use the basis of CCP law in his role within the U.S. government. And in terms of subversion, well, you know, the CCP would absolutely love this. The CCP would absolutely try to influence people so that they do things like this. I'd say that even the censorship systems whereby, you know, if a basketball player calls out slave labor in China, that the CCP can censor a basketball player like they do with the Enes Kanter Freedom. This is just another example of that, but a little more serious because this is through the U.S. government.
Wow, and now the Epoch Times actually just released a piece titled "The New York Times, after years of appeasing the CCP, now plans attack on Shen Yun." Now, what's the media's role in all of this? Why would the CCP want to influence the media?
Well, so we see a pattern with this, that the Chinese Communist Party has been mobilizing spies, agents, diplomats, everything it possibly can in order to try to stop Shen Yun Performing Arts from being able to hold its shows. We know that in several countries, the CCP uses its embassies to pressure the theaters, to pressure government officials, to go after anybody it can to try to get these shows from not happening. And the issue with the New York Times apparently working on a hit piece, we think, you know, based on the information we've seen, we believe they may be trying to do a hit piece on Shen Yun. It seems like the angle they have, based on interviews Epoch Times has done, is very much in line with the CCP's narratives and seems to have really just a bias as its starting point, what seems to be not really accurate information. We don't know their motives. We're trying to figure out what's going on here still. We don't know the thinking of New York Times or whatever, but without a doubt that would fit into the CCP's interest, and without a doubt they have a track record of parroting CCP propaganda. In fact, they have a track record of publishing direct CCP propaganda, including op-eds of CCP officials, including canceling stories about human rights abuses in China based on public admissions from, you know, former reporters at the New York Times, based on their reporting, for example, and even based on the fact that they take paid inserts of Chinese state media, and they don't seem to have a problem with any of that. So, you know, this does fit into a broader pattern. We don't know their motives, but it does seem to be the case that they work very closely with the CCP on a lot of things.
Given the level of infiltration that you just laid out by the Chinese Communist Party, what is the solution here then? How does America stay America?
Well, I think the United States needs to recognize that the Chinese Communist Party has different ways of waging war than we would normally think of. Information, culture, you know, they talk about worldview warfare, psychological warfare. For the Chinese Communist Party, this is one of the grounds on which it fights its battles. In fact, adopted into Chinese Communist Party military law, the PLA's actual standards, they have things like for example, the three warfares, which is media warfare, legal warfare, and psychological warfare. They regard this as war. And I think the United States needs to start understanding that, this is what modern war looks like. I think when we were in Afghanistan and we had COIN counterinsurgency operations, we started realizing that the quote-unquote hearts and minds are in fact a warfare domain. What we failed to realize, though, is that hostile countries that openly state their intent to overthrow the United States, like the Chinese Communist Party, that for them, they're doing this on a very large scale already. That a lot of people may be acting under the auspices of the Chinese Communist Party while appearing to be government officials or journalists or diplomats or whatever else, even maybe business leaders and so on. That if individuals have been co-opted by a foreign power to enforce CCP law in the United States or, parrot CCP narratives in the United States with the intent of advancing the interests of the Communist Party of China, they should be recognized as such. I think we need better ways of doing background checks, maybe better ways of using, for example, foreign agent registration, and start holding these people to account. Because again, for the Chinese Communist Party, this is war.
Quite alarming indeed. Joshua, Philip, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, very much a pleasure. Thank you, Tiffany.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty to discuss today. Let's start in college basketball, where the first 4 games of the NCAA tournament are starting. But technically, this isn't the first round. So what exactly is this?
It's like the pre-first round. The NCAA tournament was expanded to 64 teams back in 1985. Now, 64 is a good number because it means every team plays a maximum of 6 games if they kept winning. No one gets a bye. So it was 64 teams for a number of years until the Mountain West Conference joined Division I in 2001. The NCAA gave them an automatic bid as well. Now remember, there's 2 ways of making the tournament. Either you get your conference's automatic bid by winning the conference tournament, or the tournament committee selects you as an at-large bid based on your whole body of work. So anyway, when the Mountain West joined, instead of giving them an automatic bid and then taking away one of the at-large bids, they just expanded the field to 65 teams, and they had this little-known play-in game for the lowest-ranked teams. Now we're up to 68 teams, which means 4 play-in games, and they're now referred to as the first 4. And if any of those teams advance all the way, they need 7 wins instead of 6 like everyone else. So it's not very aesthetically pleasing, if you ask me.
Now, there are some in college basketball who have been in favor of getting rid of those automatic bids for some of the lower conferences. Does it sound like that's a possibility?
I hope not. I think this is a pipe dream of some of the bigger conferences because fans love the small school upsets. They love watching these early rounds to see if the Fairleigh Dickinsons or the St. Peters can pull off the upset over Purdue or Kentucky or whoever. Those are always the most memorable moments. And really the tournament seems to be set up to allow that to happen. The higher seeds, they don't get home court advantage. I know they try to send them near their campus, but it's never the same. Now they're supposed to also get an easier draw to get to the Final Four anyway, but that's really only the first round. After that, there's no easy games, and even those are getting much more difficult. Now I will say I prefer to see the best playing the best at the Final Four though, but the high possibility of upsets in the first early rounds anyway is a nice balance, I think, to the tournament.
Switching gears to football, the NFL is considering radical changes to their kickoff rules that would really move all the players downfield. What's the reason for this?
Player safety. The kickoffs are where the biggest injuries, whether it's head or spinal, occur because everyone is running full speed and blocking and tackling at the same time. Those full speed collisions produce the worst injuries. Now this rule would put the majority of the kicking team, except for the kicker, on the receiving team's 40-yard line. Normally they're at their own 35-yard line, so that's like a 25-yard difference closer to the end zone. And the receiving team would put 9 of their 11 players between the 30 and 35-yard line, so they would all be less than 10 yards away from the kicking team's players. That would slow everyone down. Now the flip side is no fair catches would then be allowed under this. Now if a team wants to do an onside kick too, they would line up with the kicker like traditionally they would do at the 35-yard line, but there would be no fake onside kicks, of course. Now this is just a proposal. It's unclear if it's going to pass. I think 24 of the league's 32 owners still have to vote on it, so it's a possibility for next year anyway.
In baseball, the regular season kicked off yesterday as the Dodgers won their opener against the Padres while playing the game in Korea. What are we looking at in Game 2?
Well, Shohei Ohtani is still playing, but the Dodgers are also going to try out their new Japanese starter, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, he doesn't have the same recognition that Ohtani does, at least not yet, but he signed the biggest contract ever for a pitcher, $325 million, and he's never even pitched in the majors before. So this is all based on his success in Japan and the fact that he's only just 25 years old. So his signing kind of flew under the radar because everyone was still reeling from the $700 million they gave Ohtani. Now, Ohtani had a memorable night yesterday with a pair of hits. He also had a base running miscue, though. Now, it should be noted, every other team is still playing spring training games right now. They all want the attention on this series in Korea. Anyway, Game 2 is 6 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning in Korea.
Quite early for all of us.
Yes, I'll be waking up to watch that game for sure.
Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tiff.
Which cities are ranked as the happiest in the nation and what makes them such great places to live? NTD's Christina Corona has this year's picks.
We're here in the city of Irvine, where it has been ranked number 5 of the happiest cities in the U.S., according to a study conducted by Wallet Hub. Wallet Hub compared 182 of the largest cities in the country, evaluating them across 3 dimensions: emotional and physical well-being, income and employment, and community and environment. In the rankings, Scottsdale, Arizona claims the 10th spot, followed by Columbia, Maryland, and Pearl City, Hawaii. San Francisco secures the 7th position, celebrated for its iconic Golden Gate Bridge and vibrant culture. Renowned for its stunning beaches, Honolulu, Hawaii secures the 6th rank. While recognized for its meticulously planned urban layout and educational institutions, Irvine, California claims the number 5 spot. Madison, Wisconsin claims the 4th position, with San Jose, California taking 3rd place. And Overland Park, Kansas follows closely at number 2. And Fremont, California earns the title of the happiest city in America.
This is the 6th time out of the past 8 years that we've been ranked the happiest city in the U.S. And there's reason behind it. We operate the city activities as the city government. We have to base on the residents' value and try to meet their needs.
He says public safety is their highest priority, along with the latest technologies. He says they also embrace innovations, not only to create new jobs, but to invite more companies to settle down in Fremont.
We are very glad that we use so many ways to reach out to the community to understand their needs. Therefore, when the services we provide meet their needs, they're happy.
According to Wallet Hub, Fremont tends to have high rates of life satisfaction, low depression levels, and holds the title of having the lowest separation and divorce rate in the country, standing at only 8.9%. Christina Corona, NTD News, Irvine.
And that's all for today's news. For more coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.